From 2024, we've got the werewolf movie titled ever so cleverly Werewolves. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say up front, I give this movie a 2 out of 5, and that's being pretty genuine because, it could be a good popcorn flick that you can enjoy as long as you watch it with absolutely no thought at all given to the plot and how ridiculous the plot is and how the plot makes no sense. And, that may be a little too much for most to ask, but nonetheless, this thing at the heart of the subject feels like the purge with werewolves, and a whole lot of lens flares because this movie is overridden with the lens flare thing, and I don't know if it's because it was kind of made a little cheap. I don't know if it was because they wanted to make a stylistic choice. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, this movie was originally going to be titled Year Two. They changed it to Werewolves, but the plot is one day we had this big supermoon, and when we had the big supermoon, everybody that was exposed to the moon turned into werewolves, and it became this big tragic event. So now we're the second year into it. It's Year Two, and this big supermoon is coming back. So our main guy is a scientist. His brother died the year before, so he's kind of left with his niece and his sister-in-law. And he's going to go to the lab where Diamond Phillips is actually come out of the woodwork and playing a role. And they are going to figure out what is going on. And of course, as things do, things go wrong. And the werewolves are set free. But, anybody exposed to the moon is at risk of turning to a werewolf unless they have this thing on them or they're covered up, which makes not a whole lot of sense because this movie has things where if you're in a house and the roof gets a hole shot in it, the moon shines bright through there and you have to avoid the rays so you don't turn into a werewolf. But you also have a situation where at times in the movie it's pouring down the rain and this, the moon is still shining. So yeah, it makes absolutely no sense in those regards. But the plot is when things go back to the lab, the scientist guy and this female scientist that he's close with try to make it to his house to take care of his family while the wolves are out. And most people are put up or indoors, kind of like the purge. But in this case, if you're out and the moon, or you're exposed to the moon, then you turn into a werewolf unwillingly. Although the logic and some of the willingness kind of goes out the window a little bit at the end. The end's very anticlimactic. The ending makes absolutely, positively no sense because at times that's when the rain part of it I was telling you about comes into play. And yeah, man, I don't know. There's just no logic. I don't think they understand how the moon works. I don't think they understand how like the glow of the moon works. They're basically acting like everybody's vampires, and instead of dodging the sun, they're dodging moon rays. But as you know, the moon shines, but it doesn't necessarily shoot beams through your window. But I guess when you're, you know, it's universal. So maybe they were like, well, we made swimming, night swim, so the hell with it at this point. Nonetheless, it's a 2 out of 5. It's okay for what it is. The only thing you're gonna get besides the digital code, if you buy this Blu-ray, is deleted scenes. Sadly, the deleted scenes add no more logic to the movie. This is directed by Stephen C. Miller, who about 4,000 years ago made the aggression scale that I enjoyed. I interacted with him one time. I think he's on my Facebook. I mentioned something about CGI and Silent Night, the remake of Silent Night that he made. And I believe he corrected me and said there was no digital effects in Silent Night. So maybe one of these years I'll go back and revisit that and make sure he was being on the up and up with me. He also made, was it Autotomic Transfusion or something like that from the Dimension Extreme line, like 7,000 years ago, I think, when he made that. And I've been waiting for the sequel, and I don't think we're ever going to get it. But instead, we get werewolves with lens flares and no logic and some very, very bad, corny dialogue at times. And some characters show up without rhyme or reason. Some things happen in this movie without rhyme or reason. I kind of got some heat on here one time for spoiling things, so I'm not going to spoil anything. But I will say, maybe one day I'll talk about it on a podcast or something. But there is things in this movie that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. But if you're interested in giving it a old day at court, then by all means pick up a copy. Available from Universal. It's on all streaming platforms. I had heard good things. Most of those things were a lie. But nonetheless, werewolves. Rawr.